Hello everyone, my name is Nazli Cila, and on behalf of my co-authors Cristina Zaga and Luce Lupetti, I'll be presenting our work entitled as Learning from Robotic Artifacts, a quest for strong concepts in human-robot interaction. The idea behind this work is based on an observation we had within the field. So most of the time, the research starts by defining a problem and development of a robot that could be one potential solution to this problem. An evaluation is made and the results are shared with the wider community. We think that this is quite a linear and straightforward way of producing knowledge. And this is also actually addressed by the leading names in the field by saying that it seems like there is only one recipe to be accepted to the flagship HRI conference, or like looking at the publications that has been done in this conference, empirical work and experimental papers outnumber any other type of work. And this kind of work is definitely very valuable and it will definitely carry the field further. But we also would like to bring to everyone's attention that there are alternative ways that would help the HRI community to think what HRI design, like epistemology is, and it could be. This kind of a question has already been tackled a lot in this community and in HCI community in the last decades. In the seminal work of Eric Stolterman and Michael Wieberg, they have claimed that this kind of artifact-centered work do not leave a lasting impression on the audience because they do not address, challenge, or complement the existing body of theoretical knowledge. This kind of problematizing also is addressed by Barendregt and her colleagues for the child-computer interaction field, and they argued that artifact-centered papers generally make a smaller contribution to the field because it is harder for other designers and other researchers to build further upon the kind of knowledge presented. In our work, we actually replicated the methodology of Barendregt and her colleagues in the HRI field. So we looked at the flagship HRI conference from 2006 to last year, 2020, and we asked the question, which portion of the whole papers that were presented in this conference were indeed artifact-centered, and actually what kind of an impact do these papers have when compared to other types of papers, and we measured it in terms of the citations they got. We coded 587 papers and we assessed whether they could be considered as artifact-centered or not. And they fall in a range between 30% to 54% of the whole papers presented in the conference were artifact-centered paper with a mean of 41.2%. And we have also found out a statistically significant difference between the artifact-centered papers and the other types of papers in terms of the citation number. So which indeed shows that artifact-centered papers have been cited less. And this is an indirect implication that they have a lower impact than the other types of papers. Then we carried this discussion with the questions that has been addressed in this community in the past years, which is related to intermediate level knowledge. So in the seminal work of Cristina and Jonas Löfgren, the authors describe a space between particular artifacts, which are specific robot designs in our example, and universal theory, which are the underlying principles that explain the interactions between humans and robots, and the space in between them is not empty. This space could still be like a generating useful knowledge for other designers and researchers to build upon. And they identified multiple types of intermediate level knowledge. And in this paper, we are focusing on strong concepts. They are design elements or principles that are generative, meaning that they can be used by other researchers to create instances in different design situations. Höök and Löfgren also describe a process, how you can extract a strong concept. And you start by identifying the elements in an instance that could be valuable for other design situations. Then you link these elements to similar concepts. This is called horizontal grounding in order to scope the range of applicability. Then you conduct vertical grounding by examining whether the strong concept is present in other known concepts and theories. And lastly, you assess whether the strong concept is contestable, defensible, and substantive. So we were curious by looking at the artifact-centered papers we identified, whether we are able to extract these defensible, contestable, and substantive strong concepts, and what kind of concepts would they be. What we did is that we took the artifact-centered papers with the highest number of citations and coded them again, and made it like basically identified two primary strong concepts. And one of them is grounding communication, and the other one is same versus other. Due to the time limits, I'll only talk about the first one in this presentation, but I would like to invite the audience to please check our paper to get more insights about the other one as well. Grounding communication refers to the ability to non-verbally coordinate the content and process of communication. In HRI, it typically refers to different types of gaze, the use of gestures, and intent communication. A couple of examples from our corpus could be, for example, the work of Sean Andrist and his colleagues, where they studied the design of gaze aversion, how it helps the robots to signal cognitive efforts, or the work of Daniel Zafir and his colleagues, who designed a natural and intuitive flight motion in order to communicate the intent of assistive free flyer robots. So, like, we use these elements to extract the strong concept, and we made a very brief attempt for horizontal grounding by looking at the fields such as linguistics and semiotics, but also more related fields such as CSCW or human virtual agent interaction fields. Then we also looked at the other type of work that is still about HRI, but outside the scope of the conference, and the type of work that, for example, used gaze for cognitive modeling of robots, behavior coordination, design of social cues, and etc. And lastly, we very briefly assess the contestability, defensibility, and substantiveness of these strong concepts. So, for example, contestability links to horizontal grounding, which shows the roots of a particular concept, the way we did in relation to linguistics and semiotics, and you make an assessment of how it is addressed there in order to address how novel this concept is for the HRI community. Then, defensibility links to vertical grounding, which, looking at the similar works in the field, provide the evidence for the validity of this strong concept. And lastly, substantiveness is about if it is possible for others to build upon the examples, employ similar approaches in a different problem. So grounding communication can be generative, both in the creation of design principles and the generation of heuristics, in our opinion. In other words, so when the researchers or designers are faced with a new design challenge about, for example, creating intimacy between a human and a robot, or communicating intent, they can resort to this strong concept of grounding communication and get inspiration by the examples within that falls under this strong concept. So I would like to summarize, wrap up my presentation by framing this paper as a call of action for HRI and HCI community together. So HRI community, we invite them to embrace designerly ways of knowing, because conceptual tools such as strong concepts can create a very good foundation of knowledge that can be referred to and built upon in HRI. It can also help the field to articulate and generalize the knowledge that resides already in currently existing artifacts and design processes. HCI can also benefit from engaging conversations with the HRI field, because it can really expand the ongoing inquiries on research through design and intermediate level knowledge to another sister field. And in this field, the definition of artifacts might or is actually quite different from the definition of what an artifact is in the HCI field. So we can really learn from these complex artifacts where design and engineering are entangled to one another. So I really invite us to have this interdisciplinary dialogue with each other, and hopefully we will get to see more bridges between these two disciplines. Thank you very much for your attention.